Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to Module 2. Today we are continuing our journey into the methods that psychologists use to understand the mind and behavior. And today we'll be focusing on building a psychological study. In our last lecture, we explored how abstract ideas like love or happiness can be measured through operationalization. And we discussed how to choose representative samples to make our research meaningful. Let's start with a quick review. Which of the following is the best example of operationalizing the core concept of stress? A, asking participants to describe a time that they felt stressed. B, measuring cortisol levels in saliva. C, measuring stress as a state of mental or emotional strain. Or D, telling participants that they're about to experience a stressful task. The correct answer is B. Measuring cortisol levels takes an abstract concept like stress and translates it into a concrete, measurable variable. What is the primary difference between random sampling and random assignment? Random sampling occurs after participants are selected, while random assignment happens first. B, random sampling ensures generalizability, while random assignment ensures fairness in experiments. C, random sampling selects participants from a population, while random assignment divides participants into experimental groups. Or D, random sampling controls for bias, while random assignment controls for extraneous variables. The correct answer is C. Random sampling focuses on how participants are chosen, while random assignment focuses on how they're placed into conditions within a study. Great work. Now let me ask you something. Have you ever seen a claim so bold that you wondered, how on earth could they prove that? Today, we're tackling that exact question. We'll explore how psychologists design studies to test their hypotheses. We'll identify biases that can lead to inaccurate conclusions and evaluate the validity of our findings. Section 1 will look at psychological studies. Section 2 will look at how bias and error can creep into our research and how we can minimize it. Section 3 will look at how we structure true experiments. Section 4 will look at the critical role of validity in evaluating research findings, and then we'll end with some conclusion and review. By the end of this lecture, you'll have a toolkit to think critically about studies that you encounter, whether in psychology or in everyday life. To start, let me ask you a question. Would you spend $20 for a product that gave you more energy, balance, strength, and focus? How would you evaluate whether these claims are reliable or not? In this lecture, we'll be traveling back to the early 2000s and dissecting a bit of tricky marketing, the Power Balance bracelet. This product claimed to improve all of these things through holographic technology. But did the bracelet actually live up to those claims? To try to prove this, the Power Balance bracelet creators often used a demonstration that looked like science. Let's watch a video that showcases this technique.
What I have to demonstrate for you today is a revolutionary new product. What we've been able to do is harness naturally occurring frequencies and program them into a Mylar hologram to help improve your balance, your strength, and your flexibility. I'm here with Akolo, and what we're going to demonstrate for you are 3 power balance tests. First, what we're going to do with Akolo is demonstrate the balance test. So Akolo, if you would, put your feet together for me, your arms straight out to your side. What you're going to want to do is when you perform this test is make sure that they have their arms stiff in a firm position so that if you push down, they can resist. The reason that you want to get the person that you're testing into this position is so they can understand what's about to occur. You want them to be able to feel the resistance you're going to place on their arm. So I'm going to push straight down, resist, don't let me push down. Good. Now what you're going to want to do is have them lift their left leg and find their balance point. Good. Once they're up and have found their balance point, you're going to push down again on the same place of their arm. So Akolo, again, resist until you tip over. Good. Now what you're going to want to do is perform the same thing, only with the power balance on. One of the great things about this product is that they don't actually need to be wearing it. They can either be holding it. I could set it on the top of his head. It wouldn't matter. All that matters is that the product is within 1 to 3 inches of your body's energy field. So now, recreate the exact same test. Feet together, arms out, lift that left leg. Using the same point on the elbow, I'm going to push down again and resist. A little bit of a difference?
Yeah, considerably.
All right, now that we've increased your balance, let's show them how this product can impact strength. What we're gonna do is we've got a Colo here, pretty strong guy, right? Work out, paddleboard, got the whole deal, got some nice shoulders. What I want you to do for me, put your feet together, hands right here at your side, okay? What I want you to do is grip my fist tight, okay? I'm gonna push straight down, I want you to resist. Do not let me push you over, all right? So make sure when you're pushing that you're not pulling away, but you're pushing straight down. All right, so same thing again. We're gonna put the product on, and once again, it doesn't matter. The fact that he's wearing which wrist doesn't matter. As long as it's within his body's energy field, it's gonna function. All right, here we go.
Come on, you got more than that. Wow.
Obviously, a tremendous increase. So we've demoed strength and we demoed balance. Now let's do the flexibility demonstration, Nicola. All right, for this one, we're gonna have him start facing the camera so that you can understand it, and then we're gonna allow the camera to mark his rotation. So what you would like to do is, again, feet together, same position as always. Right arm straight out, okay? Pointing straight ahead. So for the sake of this, turn and face away. All the way for me, okay? Now what I want you to do is rotate back as far as you possibly can. Mark the point with your eyes, trace your arm with your eyes as far as you can. Is that it right there?
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead and return. Now let's put the product on. Do the same thing for me.
A lot farther.
Noticeable difference, huh?
Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely.
Now that we've seen the video, let's break it down. Does this demonstration seem convincing to you? What kind of study do you think is being conducted here? What types of results would you need to see to trust the claims of the Power Balance bracelet? If we examine this more closely, we see it's essentially a correlational case study. It's a single participant performing a single test. Let's use this example as a springboard to explore the types of studies that psychologists use to test their hypotheses. Starting with case studies. Case studies involve in-depth investigations of a single individual, group, organization, or event. In the power balance example, the balance demonstration is essentially a case study because it only focuses on one person. Some strengths for case studies is that they often allow for detailed exploration of unique or sometimes rare phenomena, and they're often used to generate hypotheses for further research. But some limitations include that findings from case studies might not generalize to other people or situations. They don't allow us to establish causation. Next, let's talk about correlational studies, which examine the relationship between two or more variables without manipulating them. In the case of the Power Balance bracelet, we might ask, is there a relationship between wearing the bracelet and improved balance or focus? We're looking at both of these measures and we're measuring them both, but there isn't really a consistent manipulation happening, which we'll be talking about later. Some strengths of correlational studies include that they're useful for studying variables that can't be ethically or practically manipulated. They can also analyze large data sets to identify trends. Some limitations include that correlations may arise from confounding variables, and they cannot establish cause and effect relationships. Let's say we do find a correlation between bracelet wearers and improved balance. Does this mean that the Power Balance bracelet caused the improvement? Or could confident, coordinated people be more likely to buy and wear the bracelet? Correlational studies alone can't answer this question. And that brings us to an often repeated, but still very true phrase. Correlation does not equal causation. Remember that. Let's take a look at some other explanations that could explain the Power Balance demonstration that doesn't relate to the fact that the Power Balance bracelet might be causing the improvements. Biases are like sneaky intruders. They can creep into a study through researchers' expectations, participants' behavior, or even the way the data is collected. To trust the results of a study, we need to be confident that the findings reflect reality, not errors that are distorted by bias. For example, in the Power Balance study, how do we know that it's the actual Power Balance bracelet's holographic technology that is providing the benefits, and not just the participants' belief that the bracelet will work? To help test this, many studies will introduce something called a placebo control. Placebo controls help researchers to control for this effect, which is known as the placebo effect. The placebo effect happens when participants experience a change simply because they believe that they're receiving a treatment, even if that treatment is inactive. What about the expectations of the researchers? Could they impair the results of a study? Cue the Rosenthal effect, or the Pygmalion effect. The Rosenthal effect occurs when researchers' expectations unintentionally influence the outcome of a study. In the power balance demonstration, the person testing the balance might subconsciously apply less force when the participant wears the bracelet, causing the illusion of improved performance. To avoid this, researchers use double-blind procedures, where neither the researcher nor the participants know who's receiving the treatment or the placebo. What about if participants in the power balance demonstration suspected they were expected to perform better with the bracelet? They might unconsciously try harder to meet those expectations. This is an example of demand characteristics. Demand characteristics refer to subtle cues in a study that lead participants to guess the researcher's hypothesis and alter their behavior accordingly. We can minimize demand characteristics by keeping participants naive about the true purpose of the study and using standardized instructions to ensure consistency across participants. Then there's the social desirability bias. Social desirability biases happen when participants respond in ways that they think are socially acceptable rather than truthful. Imagine participants exaggerating their positive experiences with the bracelet because they don't want to appear gullible or naive. We can minimize this by assuring participants that their responses are anonymous and emphasize the importance of honesty. Finally, we have order effects. The order effect occurs when the sequence in which participants experience conditions influences the results. In the power balance test, participants always performed without the bracelet first, and then with the bracelet on. By the second trial, they may have improved simply because they practiced the task, not necessarily because of the bracelet. Researchers use a process called counterbalancing when different participants experience the conditions in different orders to help control for these effects. Seeing how these biases can skew results makes those power balance effects claims a lot less reliable, doesn't it? Let's do some review. Which of the following is an example of the Rosenthal effect or Pygmalion effect in a study? A. Participants perform better because they believe the treatment is effective, even if it isn't. B. A researcher unintentionally encourages participants to behave in a way that confirms the hypothesis. C. Participants guess the purpose of the study and adjust their behavior accordingly. Or D. Participants respond dishonestly to present themselves in a positive light. The correct answer is B. The Rosenthal effect occurs when researchers' expectations unintentionally influence participants or how results are interpreted. What would an actual experiment testing the power balance bracelet look like? How could these biases be controlled for and causality be tested? Let's take a look at an actual research study done on the power balance bracelet and see what they found.
Outside the Lines went to the University of Wisconsin at La Crosse, where exercise physiologists were studying the power balance bracelet for the American Council on Exercise, a consumer watchdog. Dr. John Porcari and his staff tested 12 men and 9 women, 20 of them UWL athletes, to determine if the power balance bracelet provides more athletic benefits than a rubber placebo bracelet that costs roughly 30 cents. Each subject performed 4 tests, similar to those used in demonstrations on the Power Balance website. The bracelets were covered with a shroud so that neither the subjects nor the examiners knew which bracelet was being worn during each test.
Okay, we're good.
Based on what we saw, doesn't seem to work.
Dr. Porcari's data indicates the Power Balance bracelet offers no performance benefit when compared to the 30-cent placebo bracelet.
No improvement in flexibility, no difference in balance, strength, or vertical jump. Absolutely no difference.
When we told Power Balance about the results of the UWL study, the company issued a response, which read in part, "Power Balance has lived and thrived in the ultimate testing environment, the real world."
Okay, go ahead and rotate as far as you can.
All the subjects wore both bracelets, but despite the order in which they were worn, whichever bracelet was worn second consistently produced higher test results. Probably, suggests Porcari, because the subject was warmed up
147.
or ready for the examiner to exert force. He calls that the order effect.
People did statistically significantly better on the second trial,
Regardless of what bracelet they were using?
regardless what bracelet they're using.
Whenever Power Balance demonstrates its product, the first test is always done without the band, and the second test with it.
Did you feel better every time you put the second band on than the first?
Yes, definitely. And after I did the test, for some reason I just felt, I don't know, like I could perform better.
Sophomore Brittany Walensky was then told that the second band she wore in each test was not the Power Balance product, but rather the 30-cent bracelet.
Really? Oh, wow.
When you look at the scientific validity of does the Power Balance bracelet work? No, it doesn't. Placebo effect works, but does the Power Balance bracelet work? Based on our pilot study of 21 subjects, we'd conclude no.
So what does that tell you?
Tell you it doesn't work. Tell you it's just, to me, it's just an absolute scam.
This study was a lot more robust than the marketing demonstration that we saw earlier. Let's discuss a few key features that were present in this video, which help set it apart as an actual experiment, as opposed to a case study or a correlational study. What are some essential features of controlled experiments? First off, they include manipulation of the independent variable, or the IV. In a controlled experiment, the researchers actively manipulate the independent variable. Now, for the Power Balance study, the independent variable would be the bracelet that the participants are wearing, whether it's the actual Power Balance bracelet or a placebo. There also needs to be measurement of a dependent variable, or a DV. The dependent variable is the outcome that the researchers are measuring to see if it changes due to the IV. In this case, the DV might be balance or strength, and it was measured in a standardized way. A true experiment includes random assignment. Participants are randomly assigned to experimental conditions to ensure that any difference between groups are due to the IV, not pre-existing factors. For example, some participants would wear the power bracelet first, while others would start with the placebo. A true experiment also controls for extraneous variables. Researchers control for factors that could influence the results, like the order of testing, the expectations of participants, or the behavior of the experimenter. One of the most powerful tools in this controlled experiment that we watched is the double-blind procedure. Neither the participants nor the researchers know who is receiving treatment or placebo. This eliminates the Rosenthal effect and demand characteristics. In this experiment, the bracelets were covered so that neither the participants nor the researchers knew which version was being tested. When an experiment has a manipulation, random assignment, and a control group, we can determine a causal relationship. In other words, we can determine whether the manipulation of the independent variable actually caused a change in the dependent variable. Though in the case of the Power Balance bracelet, this experiment actually demonstrated a lack of causality. Let's ask another question. Do you think that flowers in a hospital room can improve a patient's recovery? Researchers Park and Matson in a 2009 study wanted to test just that, and they did a rather good job of it, which is why I wanted to show you this example. Here's how they designed their study. They had 80 female patients recovering from surgery. The independent variable was the presence or absence of flowers in the hospital room. The dependent variables were days in the hospital, amount of painkiller use, pain ratings, and ratings of anxiety levels. They used random assignment, in which patients were randomly assigned either to a room with flowers, which was the active condition, or without flowers, which was the control condition. So what did they find? As it turns out, patients in room with flowers had shorter hospital stays, used fewer painkillers, and reported lower levels of pain and anxiety. By carefully controlling variables and randomly assigning participants, the researchers could confidently attribute these improvements to the presence of the flowers. We've now seen how controlled experiments can help us minimize bias and establish causation. But how do we evaluate whether the results of an experiment are meaningful and applicable? That's where validity comes in. So let's explore that idea next. When we talk about validity in research, validity refers to whether a study measures what it claims to measure, whether its findings are meaningful and applicable. Without validity, even the most carefully designed experiments can lead to misleading conclusions. Today we'll focus on two critical types of validity: internal validity and external validity. Internal validity tells us whether we can confidently say that changes in the independent variable cause the changes in the dependent variable. In the power balance bracelet demonstration, a lack of control, or random assignment, greatly limited its internal validity. Confounding factors like practice effects or the placebo effect weren't controlled for. A study with high internal validity has strong controls over confounding variables and uses random assignment to ensure groups are comparable. Specific threats to internal validity include confounding variables, which are other factors that may be influencing the dependent variable, bias, like what we've been discussing, placebo effects, Rosenthal effects, demand characteristics, etc., and poor controls, inconsistent procedures, or lack of random assignment. High internal validity is essential for establishing causality, which is why true experiments, like the Park and Mattson study, are designed to minimize these threats. However, whether something is internally valid or not doesn't necessarily give us information about a mechanism. For example, in the Park and Mattson study, we don't know why the presence of flowers caused better hospital outcomes. This could have been due to psychological effects or maybe even physical properties of the plants that were used. Having high internal validity only gives us confidence in the causal relationship, but not the mechanism. While internal validity focuses on what happens inside the study, external validity asks a different question. Can the results be generalized to other populations, settings, or times? Imagine if the Park and Mattson study included only patients recovering from minor surgeries. Would the findings about flowers generalize to patients recovering from major surgeries or different medical conditions? External validity ensures the findings apply to broader contexts. A study with high external validity reflects real-world conditions. It includes a representative sample of the population. Threats to external validity include limited sample diversity, which shows that findings might not apply to other groups, and artificial conditions. Highly controlled lab settings may not always reflect real-world environments. But here's the tricky part. Studies with high internal validity sometimes sacrifice external validity. For example, a tightly controlled lab experiment might establish causality, but not reflect real-world conditions. On the flip side, studies with high external validity might lack the controls needed to pinpoint causality. How would you balance these two priorities in a study? It depends on your goals. If you're testing a new medical treatment, internal validity might be your top priority. But if you're studying human behavior in everyday life, external validity might take precedence. Validity is what separates meaningful things from noise. A study with strong internal validity gives us confidence about causation, while strong external validity ensures the findings matter beyond the lab. Today, we've taken a deep dive into the science of designing psychological studies. So let's recap some highlights. We talked about several different types of studies, including case studies, which provide detailed insights but lack generalizability. We talked about correlational studies, which identify relationships between variables but can't establish causation. Remember, correlation does not equal causation. And we talked about controlled experiments and how they're the gold standard for identifying cause and effect by manipulating variables and controlling bias. We discussed bias and error. We talked about some common biases like the placebo effect, demand characteristics, the Rosenthal effect, and how all of these can distort findings. And we discussed some strategies, including placebo controls, double-blind procedures, and counterbalancing that helps to reduce these biases. Finally, we discussed validity. Internal validity ensures that we can confidently attribute changes in the dependent variable to the independent variable, while external validity determines whether findings can be generalized to other populations and settings. Let's do some review. Which of the following best illustrates internal validity in a study? A, including participants from diverse age groups. B, using random assignment to ensure groups are comparable. C, conducting the study in a natural setting like a park. Or D, asking participants to report their experiences anonymously. The correct answer is B. Random assignment strengthens internal validity by ensuring differences between groups are due to the independent variable, not pre-existing factors. What is a key limitation of correlational studies? A, they require a significant amount of time and resources to conduct. B, they can establish relationships but not causation. C, they cannot include diverse samples. Or D, they cannot identify trends or patterns. The correct answer is B. Correlational studies can reveal relationships between variables, but can't determine whether one causes the other. Let's take a moment to reflect. Think about the next time you encounter a claim in the news or on social media, like a product that promises to change your life, or a study that sounds a bit too good to be true. How would you approach evaluating it? Would you consider the study design, the potential biases, the validity of the findings? These tools are your foundation for thinking critically about research and separating fact from fiction. In the next lecture, we'll dig deeper into the ethical principles that guide psychological research. After all, how we conduct research is just as important as the questions we ask and the answers we find. As always, thank you for joining me on this journey into building effective psychology research studies. Stay curious, stay resilient, and above all, live life in flux. Flux out.